All right, everyone. Welcome to the Tonto's Demise Playoff Edition Week 14 recap. Here we are, special, doing this Monday night. The game just ended. What a game it was. So I figured we only have two matchups to talk about this week. Let's just bang this one out, get it out of the way, and maybe give you a surprise Tuesday morning. Gags, if he's already asleep, maybe he'll be getting a surprise. He'll be getting lots of surprises when he wakes up tomorrow morning. But wow, this Ravens-Browns game, Chubb needed about 31 and a half points. Not quite, I don't think it was quite 32, which was more than he had gotten in any game this year. However, he gave it the old college try with a couple of touchdowns, ended up with 24 points, but not enough, and we will get to that. So a little bit of magic there to start off, because Possum Magic wins his playoff matchup, and then of course Hillbillies versus Gags to Riches. So we got Gags back here, we got Possum in the opening music, so winners getting a little love from the review here. So, all right, what happened this week? Two matchups. All right, let's see. 4 versus 5, 3 versus 6, of course. Gags, number 3 versus, well, he's the defending champion, so I guess we have to talk about his matchup first, as we always do. Gags, the number 3 seed, coming in against Hillbillies on PCP, backing his way into the playoffs at 6-7. And the number 6 seed, as we already mentioned last week, let me grab my sheet here. Gags, coming in as the number 3 seed. Again, the number 3 seed has only made it to the Tonto Bowl one time in the last 10 years. So Gags will be looking to add to that total. And the only time Gags went against the number 3 seed, which was Detling. Funny enough, those two guys, they will be seeing each other next week in week 15. And number 6 seed was Hillbillies on PCP. Again, they made it. Number 6 seed went to the Tonto Bowl 3 times, but not once in the last 5 years. So, wasn't looking good for Gags. 6 seed, not too bad. Brian, again, on paper, perhaps one of the most feared teams going into the playoffs here. With Roethlisberger basically throwing it all over the place. No running game for the Steelers. Keenan Allen, Metcalf, Dalvin, Chubb, Steelers defense. I don't think anybody was looking forward to playing them, but just I think a schedule luck here for Gags to Riches, because, and I think I said to several people before that I thought this was going to be the first game that the Steelers lost at Buffalo. As we know, they lost that Washington game last week. That was their first loss. And I thought that they were going to struggle in this matchup, and they did. Ended up losing. And what really, perhaps, in the end, cost this matchup for Hillbillies on PCP is the fact that Roethlisberger, when the Steelers had a chance to drive down, maybe put together a drive, go down, get closer. I forget if they were down 10 or so. They lost by 11, so they must have been, I can't remember offhand. This Ravens game is too fresh in my mind to remember exactly if the Steelers were within a touchdown or not when he threw that interception. But it was, I think, a 3rd down play, and instead of 3rd and 4 or something like that, and Roethlisberger, instead of trying to get the sure first down and go from there, he threw the long pass down the field towards Washington, I think, and really underthrew it. even though for a moment there, Washington was definitely open. If he throws it and hits him in stride, might have been a big play, or if not a touchdown. But Roethlisberger underthrew that pass by about 10 yards, and Washington had to come back for it. Made defensive guy for Buffalo, made the play on the ball and the interception. -3 points for Hillbillies there, and you got to figure you tack those 3 points back on, plus dinking and ducking down the field, trying to get back in the game, some completions there. Perhaps this matchup goes the other way. Although, of course, if Gags to Riches had played the defense that he had in most of the week, the Arizona Cardinals defense, they scored 47. 47, and you flipped them at the last minute, put them on the bench for the New York Giants, and the New York Giants defense got you -2. -2, not 2, not 1, not 0, not -1, -2. Nearly the lowest possible score a defense could get you. Fortunately for Gags to Riches, he holds on. Said even though Nick Chubb, not Dalvin Cook, Chubb gave it everything he could in this matchup on Monday night. Final score, Gags to Riches 172.45. Hillbillies on PCP 165.45. So exactly 7-point difference here. For Gags, Deshaun Watson, tough matchup at Chicago. He gets you just under 40 points. Tyreek Hill, let's see, he had a couple catches, 2 touchdowns, including a rushing touchdown, 26.1. Mike Evans, 3 for 56, 8.6. Beasley, 5 for 41, 9.1. David Montgomery has an 80-yard touchdown run right at the beginning of that game, and put him over 100 yards for the day. He gets you with the long touchdown bonus. His score was 30.5. Ronald Jones, 80 yards and a touchdown. He gets you 15.4. I see he's got a little Q by his name now, so we'll have to see what that is going forward, if that's a problem coming up here next week. Travis Kelce, 27.5 points, over 100 yards and a touchdown from him. In the flex, Duke Johnson, 8 points. Kicker, Sanders this week instead of Tucker. Although, looks like that might have actually been the better move because Tucker had a PAT get blocked, so he lost some points there. Sanders gets you about 9.5, I believe, was the total there. And once again, the New York Giants defense goes for -2. So Yahoo says 4. So guys, we had to actually knock 6 points off your score, but then add 3 back from the long touchdown bonus, and then 0.5 for your kicker's points there. So you actually lost 2.5 points compared to what Yahoo said there. So a little confusion. I think there was a little bit of confusion on the lineup there as to if your score was correct or not. But you doubt me. I don't know why everybody seems to always do that. But because in the end, it usually turns out that I am correct. Not to toot my own horn, I guess, but usually I end up being right. All right, then Hillbillies on PCP. What do we got? Ben Roethlisberger, 34.35. DK, 6 catches, 60 yards, and a touchdown, 18.1. Keenan Allen, 9 catches, 1 touchdown, but only 52 yards. Probably would have liked a little bit more there, especially on 9 catches, 20.2. Claypool, you're hoping more from Roethlisberger to Claypool this week. Unfortunately, only 4.5 points from him. Dalvin Cook, just over 100 yards and a touchdown. He gets 22. Again, Chubb, 2 touchdowns, 82 yards, 1 or 2 catches there. He gets 24.3 when he needed to get you 31.5. Tight end Hawkinson, 6 catches and a touchdown for him, 16.3. So plenty of touchdowns up and down Hillbillies lineup here, but it was not enough. This week in the flex, Hunter Henry, 10.1. Kicker was Butker. He goes for about 8.5. And then the Carolina Panthers defense, you went with them over your Steelers defense. Even in defeat, that actually wasn't a good play. I think the Steelers, they gave up a lot of yards. There's too many. They gave up too many points. They lost the game, but they did have a couple of turnovers. I don't know about sacks, but let's see. Definitely, I'm pretty sure the passing yardage, thanks to Diggs, was probably over there. But I think they kept the rushing fairly low. So I think, anyway, I believe the Carolina Panthers defense, their score ended up being 7, I want to say. Thanks to, let's see, a couple turnover. They had 1 turnover, 1 sack, but they lost the game. Too many points. I believe you, so that would have taken you to 1. You must have gotten 6. I think Denver must have had less than 100 yards rushing, so that bumped you up from 1 to 7 there. But that is the matchup. First playoff matchup this year. Gags to Riches, the number 3 seed, holds on Monday night, gets the win over Hillbillies on PCP, and we say goodbye to 2020, for 2020, I should say, to Hillbillies on PCP. We clap you out. Tip of the cap. The team that I thought was going to run the table and go all the way. Strange things happen, and unfortunately, this week was not on your side. Hillbillies on PCP said 165, one of their lower scores of the entire season. They had been rolling along, pushing 200 almost every week, seemingly. Let's take a look. This 162.45, right? 165.45 will end up being the second lowest score of the season for Hillbillies on PCP. He had a 139 in week 7, but other than that, he was at 190, 190, 190, 170, 200, 190, 236, 225, 180, 214, 211. So he had scored at 4 of the last 5 weeks. 4 of the last 5, the Hillbillies were over 200 points. This week, only 162 Well, he had 162 last week. So that would have been 4 out of his last 6 matchups. I'm looking at the last score, thinking that since it was so close to his score this week, thinking that was week 14, but that was actually week 13 when he had that 162 there. Anyway, the point is, what is the point? I don't know. Trying to think here. If Hillbillies had won last week when they lost and ended up 6-7, would have gone against. If he would have won last week, that would have moved Possum Magic to the number 6 seed and would have made Hillbillies on PCP up to number 5, and he would have played Disco this week, and he would have beaten Disco, and Possum Magic would have defeated Gags to Riches. So that loss last week by Hillbillies on PCP ends up costing him his playoff run. Said if you had won last week and those seedings were different, you would have knocked out Disco this week, and Possum would have knocked off the defending champion, Gags to Riches. But that's not the way it played out, so Gags to Riches still has a chance to be the first team in many years, about a decade or so, to possibly win back-to-back championships, and of course, be the first person to take out the back-to-back championship pot, which is currently up. I believe this was our 4th year, so $60 times 4 is $200. You'll be getting, if Gags wins, he'll be getting an extra $240 worth of pudding. All right, so the other matchup, of course, Possum Magic versus Disco. Disco, certainly never lacking in confidence, but unfortunately this week he was lacking in points, as Possum Magic gets a fairly easy victory, 196.55 to 159.15. Marquise Brown on Monday night here, kind of making it a little bit closer with his 40-yard touchdown. Unfortunately, that was one of his only 2 catches on the game, and got you. So that wasn't enough. As Possum Magic had a couple players have big games, not much you can do. When your opponent pushes 200, or especially when they go over 200. But anyway, let's get to the actual matchup here. It's at 196.55 to 159.15. For Possum Magic, no Tannehill. He went with Kirk Cousins this week. Picked him up, plugged him in. Ended up being a slightly better play, about a 6-point difference there. Cousins gets you 43.35. Your wide receivers, Tyler Lockett and Terry McLaurin, still almost a 200-point score when these guys were kind of quiet. 10.2 for Lockett, 4.4 for McLaurin. I thought he was going to have a bounce-back week after the Steelers shut him down. Diggs, one of the big ones here, he goes for 10 catches, 130 yards, a touchdown. He gets you just over 29 points. Then, of course, Derrick Henry, he goes for another game, over 200 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, throws in a couple catches for good measure, and gets you 41.2. So he has been on a roll. He had 41.5 2 weeks ago, and then sandwiched between was a 5.9 score last week against the Taupes. So kind of getting lucky there, but we will see what happens next week. If every other week Derrick Henry is going to score 41 points, I'm happy with that. If he's going to go 41-6, 41-6, I am very happy with that, because that means next week will be a 6-pointer. Although they are playing the Detroit Lions, and that game for Derrick Henry could very easily be another 200 rushing yard performance there. So kind of not looking forward to that. All right. Chris Carson, 76 yards, a touchdown. He gets you 18.8. Hayden Hurst, you had Logan Thomas in there for a while, but I think because Julio was out, that's probably why you plugged him in. Fortunately, it didn't cost you because he only had 1 catch for 7 yards. In the flex, Marvin Jones Jr., 4 for 48, 8.8. Kicker, only 1 point for a PAT. And then the Dallas Cowboys defense at Cincinnati Bengals. They had a long touchdown, 3 fumble recoveries, only 7 points allowed. Yahoo says 23. Let's see, we bumped you up about, 15, I think. So 38 was the score for the Dallas defense there. Okay. I'm getting myself confused here. All right, forgetting what we already talked about. But anyway, so those said McLaurin only 4, Hurst only 1, Marvin Jones 8.5, your kicker only 1 point, but you're carried this week by Diggs, Henry, Dallas defense, 30 points for Diggs, 40 for Henry, almost 40 from your defense, 43 from your quarterback. So that was enough to get you past. To make up for those underperformances from a couple players there. But it seems like almost every week everybody has a couple players who score single-digit scores and get carried by a couple players who have good games here. Let's talk about Disco and what happened this week to him. Patrick Mahomes at Miami was kind of the matchup we were talked about a little bit last week. It was going to be interesting to see how Mahomes fared against the Miami Dolphins defense, who had been playing surprisingly well so far this year. They forced 3 interceptions from Mahomes, but in the long run, he ended up getting almost 400 passing yards. Not sure how many touchdowns he had, but he got you 46, so almost 400 yards, but he still only managed to get you 46.55 points. Your wide receivers, Godwin lets you down once again this week. Only 4.5. Mike Williams gets injured, gets you a 0. And then Marquise Brown has that 40-some yard touchdown near the end of that game for Baltimore. Gets you an even 13 points. Zeke, in a wonderful matchup at Cincinnati, somehow only gets you 7.9 points, even though they won the game in blowout fashion 30-7. Really a surprise there. Thought that this would be, if there was ever going to be a spot this year where Zeke was going to blow up, this was it. And I don't know what happened. Other running back, Jonathan Taylor, he pops off this week. The lone bright spot, I would say, for Disco. 150 yards, 2 touchdowns. 33.5 points. Waller, your tight end, goes 7 for 75, 14.5 points. Josh Jacobs in the flex there. I think you probably weren't sure if he was going to play or what the situation was there, thanks to his social media post about he was healthy, but maybe not going to play there. So I think you had Dobbins in, but put Jacobs back in there. At the end, he ends up getting you... Actually, Dobbins actually would have been a slightly better play, as Jacobs gets you 10.4, while Dobbins would have been 13.3. But that really made no difference in the outcome of this matchup. Of course, if it would have, you would have been kicking yourself and probably would have hated Josh Jacobs for the rest of your life. Carlson, your kicker, he gets you about 7 or 8 points. And then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense, I think you were going back and forth on which defense to play. Oh, wow. The Washington defense, Yahoo says 31. Let's see. Tampa Bay's defense, according to Yahoo, got 15, but looks like we bump you up about 6. So their score must have been 21. So 21, let's see, since we got, this is the last matchup to talk about. So why don't we real quick see what the Washington football team's defensive total would have been if you had played them, if it would have made a difference. Probably not, considering you lost by 37 points or so. Let's see. They had 2 touchdowns, so that's 12. 3 turnovers, that's 9, so that's 21. 4 sacks, that's 25. The win gets you 28. 15 points bumps you up 6, so that's 34. And we will check the box score here. All right, come on. We were at, 34? Too many first downs. 34, 37 for rushing yards, and too many passing yards, so 37. A 16-point difference there would not have changed the outcome of this matchup. So, yeah, even if you had played Dobbins and the Redskins defense, the Washington football team. Come on. Come on, pull yourself together, man. It's the Washington football team. You're going to earn the Washington football team pen if you keep saying things like that. But anyway, Disco, even if you had made those different moves, I don't know really if Jacobs was playing, don't know why you would sit him anyway. Your receivers let you down, Zeke let you down. Yeah, really not much to say other than I think we've said before, Disco at one point said we were pretty much penciling him in for about 155 to 160 points during the course of the season. And that is exactly where he ends up this week, once again, in that 155-ish range. Quite often, that's not going to be enough to get you a win, especially here in the playoffs. So, we got everybody here. Possum Magic gets the win over Disco. We clap you out. Tip of the hat to Disco, saying goodbye until 2021. As Possum Magic, and being the 5 seed, and so the teams that moved on are 5 and 3, which means the number 5 seed is lowest. They will go on to play the Springfield Isotopes next week, which means we will have the 3rd match of the year, Isotopes versus Possum Magic. While once again, from Gags to Riches, we'll butt heads with 2 Rams on trying to climb the mountain, trying to get to the top. Fight button heads here, colliding their horns together in Week 15 of the playoffs. Gags to Riches versus Yinzer Jags. Going to be 2 excellent matchups here in Week 15, the semifinals. So, all right, team, let's do, since we got a little bit of time, let's talk about Hillbillies on PCP and their season. We'll talk about Disco a little bit too, as we say goodbye, a final goodbye to them. Again, Hillbillies on PCP started off the season 0-4, got back to 2-4, was 2-5, ended up 5-5 after week 10, but lost 2 of his last 3 matchups, despite having over 200 points there in week 11. In perhaps so far the matchup of the year, the clash against Yinzer Jags, when that score was 231 to 214. Definitely the regular season matchup of the year. We will see if anything. This matchup was pretty good. Hillbillies and Gags in the first round of the playoffs here, but wouldn't say it was the matchup of the year, especially considering nobody went over 200. Any matchup where both people go over 200, and it is a slugfest down to the end. The most exciting matchups to watch. But yeah, you contributed to that, but unfortunately, it did not help you get to where you wanted to go this year. Hillbillies on PCP, definitely the team that benefited the most, easily benefited the most from this year's 3 keepers instead of 2, because that allowed him to have the Steelers defense, DK Metcalf, and Dalvin Cook. So, top 3 players at those positions. But the rest of your team was not enough when you needed it most to keep you alive in the playoffs here. Let's take a look at his team, Hillbillies. Let's see. Come on, Yahoo here. Talking to my computer. All right. Hillbillies on the PCP did some wheeling and dealing during the course of the season. Traded for Burrow. Got Claypool. Traded away Josh Jacobs. at one point there. Let's see. Le'Veon Bell still on your team. You had a good running back trio at the beginning of the season there. Dalvin, Jacobs, and Le'Veon. Unfortunately, Le'Veon really hasn't panned out much at all, even though he transitioned over to the Chiefs. Traded away Jacobs because you were just tired of being disappointed by him, and ended up getting Chubb, which was definitely an upgrade. Would it have cost you? It did cost you. Getting Chubb cost you Justin Jefferson, which looks like he is going to be a solid player. Just a lot of solid-looking rookies coming into the league this season. Maybe it was, I don't know if it was just that these guys are just that good, or if it was something to do a little bit with, teams not really having preseason, no off-season stuff, maybe not defenses getting adequately ready to prepare for opponents and things like that. Perhaps making it a little bit easier for rookies to get out there and perform a little bit better right out of the gate. Because I really don't think it's very unusual, I think, for us to have a season where this many rookies really seem to take off and have big seasons here and look like they're going to be potential stars going forward. Anyway, let's see. What else do we got for Hillbillies on PCP? So Roethlisberger, DK, Keenan Allen ended up being really solid. Best thing that could have happened to you again was Tyrod getting that injury and Herbert coming in, because he made Keenan Allen a top 5 wide receiver, which I'm not sure would have happened if Tyrod played, at least for the first part of the season. Who knows what would have happened there. But yeah, Hawkinson, Hunter Henry, 2 good tight ends in a year where the tight end position has been really mostly trash, unless you have Travis Kelce. Who knows what will happen with Kittle. But other than that, the tight end position has been desperation. If you can get 8 to 10 points from their tight end position, that's good. You'll take it. Hawkinson has been pretty consistent. A fairly consistent 10 to 12, maybe sometimes 15-point player, which is great for this year in terms of tight end scoring there. Your kicker was Prater most of the year. You picked up Butker because he was cast off by the Yinzer Jags. And then, of course, you had Steelers defense all year long. Went against them this week. And would it have cost you the matchup? Let's take a quick look and see what it had. Because we said Carolina got you 7. So that means you would have needed the Steelers defense to get you at least 15 to change the outcome of this game. They had 2 turnovers and a sack, so that's 7 points. They lost, so we're back to 4. Too many points, so we're still at 4. Then let's check the box score here. Too many first downs, still at 4. 5, 6, 7 for rushing. So your defenses both scored the same thing, so that would have not have changed the outcome. Of course, last thing I should mention was you traded for Burrow. I think I might have mentioned it real quick there before, but probably going to be a keeper for you next year. You're going to have plenty of choices. Dalvin obviously won't be able to be a keeper again, but you've got DK. You've still got another year, I believe, with the Steelers defense if you want to go that route. But you're also going to have Burrow, who was, you know what? I think now that I'm thinking about it, this disco might have actually ruined Burrow and his keeper value, because he drafted Burrow surprisingly early. Let's take a look at the draft results and see where Disco drafted Burrow. I want to say it was before round 10. Round 8. So next year, Burrow would be a round 7 keeper. not terrible, but considering he was a rookie quarterback coming into the league, and Justin drafted Teddy Bridgewater, very last pick of the draft, and Bridgewater ended up being his quarterback for most of the season. So, Burrow ended up being pretty good, but you probably could have let him slide in the draft a lot further than he did. Kind of said round 8, maybe jumping the gun on him a little bit, especially when you had just drafted Tom Brady to go with Godwin. So interesting decisions there in Disco's draft. Let's take a look at Hillbilly's draft while I'm looking at it. Said Dalvin, Jacobs, Le'Veon, Keenan, Hunter Henry, Judy, showing some potential. We'll see what happens with him if Denver can get their quarterback situation figured out. Roethlisberger, Slayton, a disappointment. Giants really just fell apart there this season. DK, Anthony Miller, Hawkinson, Justin Jefferson, who you traded away. Sammy Watkins, Corey Davis. You drafted him in round 17. I don't know if you traded him away, probably dropped him at some point, and he actually ended up being a pretty solid player down the stretch for Saquon. It ain't so. He would be a 16th round keeper next year if Saquon decides to go that route. But yeah, Hillbillies said a solid core. One of the best running backs, one of the best receivers, one of the best defenses. Just couldn't quite pull it all together when you needed it most as we entered the playoffs here. Some bad luck early on in the season, perhaps was a predictor of things to come, and you ended up going out in the first round of the playoffs. And of course, you are joined by Disco, who goes out in the first round. Let's take a look at his lineup and some things that he did during the course of the season. As one final goodbye, let's see. He started the season with Tom Brady, ended up trading and getting Patrick Mahomes, who for several weeks there nearly single-handedly carried Disco on his back because, truth be told, and I'm sure Disco will admit it himself, a lot of players on his team just underperformed this year. Could not stay healthy. Talked about it in a review previously, especially talking about like Saquon and McCaffrey and Dak. The potential that this season could have had to go all sorts of different directions than the one that it took. I think Disco is definitely feeling that because Godwin just could not stay healthy a lot of this season. Kenny Golladay, when he was in there, he was putting up good scores when he was in there, but unfortunately, man, he could just not stay healthy. He played 4 games early in the season. He went for 16, 17 points each time, but then he has pretty much he's only played. He's played 4 games. He played week 8. He had no catches on 4 targets there, and that was the last time he played. He missed the beginning of the season, weeks 1 and 2, but then 3, 4, their bye, and then 6 and 7. So 3, 4, 6, and 7, he was putting up scores, said 16 or 17 points, scoring touchdowns, going over 100 yards, one or the other. So what could have been for Disco this year, said if Godwin could have stayed healthy and had a good year, Golladay, you could have had an excellent trio of wide receivers. Zeke definitely suffered from Dak going out. Said Waller pretty much did Waller things. Things did not pan out for Disco. So made some good trades, tried to put his team in a better position to win, but unfortunately was not able to do it. Let's take a look at his draft results. Disco here. Let's see. Zeke Galladay. You had Miles Sanders, traded him away. Jonathan Taylor looks like he is going to have a promising future. J.K. Dobbins, Christian Kirk, give up on him. Tom Brady traded away. Burrow traded away. Waller, Godwin, Pollard to back up Zeke there. Garoppolo underperformed, got hurt. Paris Campbell's been on your IR most of the season. McFarland became expendable. Hasn't really gotten too much there for Pittsburgh. T. Higgins looks like ended up having to drop him early on in the season because other things were going on. And again, and I'm sure that Disco will vent his frustration and let his opinion be very much known that, and I completely agree with this argument that T. Higgins would probably still be on Disco's team. I'm thinking about him being a keeper next year, depending on what happens with Burrow and his injury recovery. But I'm sure the potential that he shows, I would imagine that T. Higgins would still be on Disco's team if we had the deeper benches like we did for most of the time until last year or two. I think all of us at some point, I'm sure I had to do it too, and it is absolutely frustrating, especially early on in the season. You get a couple injuries, maybe things aren't going good, or people start off slow who you wanted to kind of little prospects that you kind of wanted to buy and hold and see how things turned out. But then, said with these shorter benches, you're forced to make moves when you don't want to, perhaps drop guys when you don't want to. I absolutely know I've had to do it, and it is frustrating every single time that I know people want more action on the waiver wire, but I wholeheartedly would agree with Disco that there is definitely something to being able to, again, just like a stock, take a gamble on those prospects, buy and hold on them and see if they pan out. And T. Higgins definitely one of those guys who maybe started off slow but came around, and looks like he is gonna. Until Burrow went down with his injury, Higgins was Burrow's number one guy. So we will see what happens. But yeah, Cleveland defense, you ended up getting rid of them. They were the only defense you drafted, shuffled around, picked up on the waiver wire, ended up mostly your defense is there. You ended up with the Washington football team and Tampa Bay, both teams he basically plucked off of waivers at one point or another there. So basically got two solid defense. Almost, it makes you wonder why anybody drafts defenses, especially as early as some of us do, when you basically picked up some of the better defenses in the league undrafted off the waiver wire here. So that is something interesting to think about. And then, so of course, at Disco, his first couple picks took too long to pan out there. Interesting thing too, though, he drafted. Disco loves these rookie running backs because last year he drafted Miles Sanders in round 4, so he ended up being a round 3 keeper. Perhaps these rookies could have fallen a little bit longer, but Disco loves to pounce on these guys. Sanders, he traded him away. Taylor and Dobbins will be a 3rd and 4th round keeper if that's the direction you end up going next year with those guys. But yeah. But again, just like Burrow there, these are probably guys who could have slid a little bit further down the draft, especially being rookies. I mean, if you wanted them, you want them, and you get. I'll also agree that if those are players that you want and you believe in, go out and get them. Yeah, maybe there was a little bit early. I'm assuming that the idea is that at least one of these guys is gonna pan out, and be a good player. Maybe that'll be Jonathan Taylor next year. Maybe it'll be both of them, Taylor and Dobbins. And running backs are hard, solid, consistent running backs are hard to come by in the league. So if if his strategy is to jump on them early and hope that they pan out and end up being solid keepers and a good foundation to your team, especially when you're getting them in the third, fourth, fifth rounds there in the future there. So just an interesting tidbit there that Disco has last couple of years been jumping on these rookie running backs, so maybe a little bit earlier than I would expect. But eventually, maybe it'll pan out, but it did not for him this year. As said, I think just injuries and underperforming players haunted him all season long. Although said he did go on a pretty significant winning streak during the course of the year. Let's take a look at Disco. Let's see. He started off. He was 2-1, then 2-4, and then he was 2-4, and then he went on a 5 game winning streak to get to 7-4, and then had a win-loss in his last 2 games there. Ended up 8-5, 8 wins, pretty good season there. So, but despite, so again, Disco managed to get through here with let's just be honest, kind of middling scores throughout the course of the year. Victories with 150 points, 163, 168, 153, 156, 175. Only went over 200 points in the final week of the regular season there. That one time, although you basically had 200 in week 3 where you were at 199.9. But yeah, for the most part, said Disco was right kind of in the middle there, the middle of the pack. Managed to get some good matchups and put together that winning streak. As the second half of his season, he played Ed Logger, Saquon, Mighty Midgets, Darkwing, Dub C, all team Shawshank, mostly teams that he got a lot of these wins against teams who did not make the playoffs there. So perhaps the struggles at the beginning of the season for Disco were attributed to just starting out with a difficult schedule there. So, all right, that is it, I think, for Disco. Gave it the best effort that he could. Made lots of moves. Tried to better his team, but just couldn't quite get things over the hump there and get past the first round of the playoffs here. So I don't want to get too much into it, and more than said, just being critical. I don't want to be critical and make it seem like I'm attacking anybody. Anybody's personally, just talking about your teams and how they performed during the course of the season. One last goodbye to the teams that said, of course, you lost this week. But I don't want anybody to think that I am like trying to pour it on because when you're already stinging, not putting salt in your wounds here. Anytime you fight all season long to make the playoffs. And every year, 2 of us go out in round 1, and it always stings. It hurts. It feels awful. And I am, excuse me, not condescending anybody, making fun of you, laughing at you for going out, trying to, be hurtful. Again, salt the wounds, anything like that. It hurts. It sucks. We all hate it when it happens to us. So, unfortunately, this wasn't the year for Hillbillies on PCP or Disco. So again, next week, 2 great matchups. We will have the number 1 seed, Possum Magic, or Springfield Isotopes, going against Possum Magic. Getting ahead of myself here. Again, these teams have already played each other twice this season. let's take a quick look. In weeks 2 and weeks 13, the Topes winning both matchups. First one was 242 to 189, and then in week 13, 212 to 178. So both matchups, Possum Magic put up definitely winnable scores, but the Isotopes were over 200, unfortunately for him, in both of those matchups. So Possum Magic definitely stinging and looking for the sweet taste of revenge and to knock the Isotopes out of the playoffs. And again, Possum Magic, we should fully well note, trying to chase their first Tonto Bowl. Possum Magic, the only manager in the league who has been here from year 1, who has never won the Tonto Bowl title. Disco was here from year 1, but he took a little sabbatical there, and he has yet to raise the Tonto Bowl trophy as well. But Possum Magic, again, he has been there every single year. This is year number 18. Will this be the one for Possum Magic? And again, the number 1 and 2 seeds, every year except 2011, somebody falls. One of these top 2 seeds gets knocked out and does not make it to the Tonto Bowl. Will it be me? Will it be Detling? Or will it be neither one of us? And perhaps set up a Tonto Bowl for the ages. The matchup everybody wants to see, I think. Well, except for maybe Possum and Gags to Riches there. I think it was mentioned in the podcast there. The Topes and Yinzer Jags have never met in the Tonto Bowl. So if that ends up happening this year, hopefully it'll end up being an epic clash for the ages. Last time we met in the playoffs, an epic matchup for the ages that some may still recall. But got to get past our opponents first here. Going to be 2 tough matchups. Yinzer Gags versus Yinzer Jags. Topes versus Possum Magic. Gags and Yinzer Jags have met twice in a Tonto Bowl recently in 2016 and 2018. Each of them getting a victory in those 2 Tonto Bowls. And now here they are once again in a matchup looking to get the rights to play back to the Tonto Bowl here. One of you won't make it. One of you will. We had great matchups here this week in week 14. I've managed to take a 2 matchup review and turn it into nearly an hour of talking here. So, week 15 coming up. We will have going to be 2, again, excellent matchups. Going to be nervous, and we will see how it goes as trying to get back to another Tonto Bowl. Again, going to be great matchups. Thanks, everyone, for watching, listening, or whatever it is you do, assuming anyone has gotten to this point. Hopefully this week we have no injuries, everybody stays healthy, and all of our players meet or exceed expectations. And we have 2 fantastic slugfests that maybe come down to Monday night. Monday night is the Steelers-Bengals. So let's see, could that matchup come down to Monday night there? Does Yinzer Jags have any players on those teams? He's got Ebron. Maybe he will play him. Well, yeah, probably. So it could come down to Monday night. Does Gags have any? Well, basically Steelers. Nobody really has any Bengals right now, and I don't think he has any Steelers there. And let's see, Possum doesn't have anybody. I don't think any Steelers. Next week, take a look at his lineup. So yeah, both matchups potentially could last until Monday night, we've got a Thursday night game. It's Chargers, Raiders, I think. Then we got some Saturday games this week. Slate of games on Sunday. So these are going to be, as I said, couldn't come down to this. So the Topes and Yinzers both have probably a player from the Steelers on Monday night there. Good matchup against the Bengals. So I would imagine that Ebron might be in there for Yinzer Jags. So either way, the point is I've wasted an extra 2 minutes. These are going to be, once again, excellent matchups. All the teams that made the playoffs this year, solid up and down, and making for some excellent matchups, and going to be a lot of fun to watch. So again, all right. I said goodbye already a minute or two ago. We'll do it again. Thanks, everyone, for watching, listening. Everybody stay healthy, happy, and meet or exceed expectations. And we will see you back here again next week as will I be somber or will I be jovial? I don't know. But I will be nervous until we find out one way or another here. So we will see you back again at that time to recap the events of Week 15 and see who will be advancing to Tonto Bowl 18. All right, guys, 18 years. Thank you, and we will see you again next week. Bye-bye.